Hello and welcome to the Production Pod, a place where we meet and talk all things creative production from TV broadcast, commercial and film. A place where we unite with industry professionals. My name's Craig Reeves and have worked in the world of post-production since being introduced to the industry back in 2006 and have since played a role in building a virtual post-production facility named Pickled. You are obviously listening to this via a platform, but please let me make you aware of other platforms available, other channels that are available, should I say. We're available as a video cast over on Facebook. We are on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Spotify. And you can find us by simply searching for The Production Pod. Today, we are chatting with Elliott Viles, a modern-day prop maker who utilizes 3D modeling and printing to create some of the most awesome props you'll have seen on screen. Elliot, hello.
How's it going?
It's good. Welcome to the Production Pod. 3D model maker. So how do we know each other? That's what we should probably discuss. We've known each other for quite a while.
Yeah, I was just saying to you, I think the first bit of industry experience I got was it the 2 weeks at Ragdoll?
Yeah.
Doing a bit of was it Photoshop editing of the Abney and Teal?
Yeah. I see. There was a lot of photoshopping that needed to go on that show, if I remember. They'd shot all the models.
And stuff.
The models were real, and then they'd shot them like 360 degrees around with an SLR camera, and then they needed to basically remove the backgrounds and clean up the characters. And I remember spending many hours working on that. And great that they'd got you in for work experience to also do that. Yeah. What great work experience! Excellent. So you're a digital prop maker. Well, you're not a digital prop maker. You're a prop maker that uses digital 3D skills, tools to create physical props, right?
Yeah. So it's like a combination of using CAD and ZBrush sculptural software, sub-D software, 3D scanning, 3D printing. You output that, it gets molded, it gets painted, finished, and there's so much you can do with the technology. People would say a lot of the younger kids or the new kids are using 3D printing now, and the older generation are still used to bench building. But you find now that in the workshops that there's a 3D printer on every production, and scanning and printing I think it's the norm now. Some people don't like it, some people do, but
Well, I guess it opens up a world of being able to create more interesting things, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I guess you can create something. If it doesn't work when it prints, you can just adapt it and start again and reprint it. Whereas I suppose in the old method, you would be carving wood and, welding metal. And if it doesn't work, you've got to start again from scratch, maybe. I don't know.
I think it's speed and the ability to create bespoke shapes that if you were to bench build, it might take a long time. And I think that's why some people feel in some ways it's taking away their jobs. But I think if you can use what you've already learned and incorporate new technology, you can make your life easier.
What kind of models do you specifically create? Because I've looked at your social feed and I see a lot of weapons and really cool looking stuff that you're involved with.
Yeah, I've got an obsession with hand props, hero props, little gadgets, technical sci-fi little handhold props, guns. Specifically guns. Bit of a gun nut, really. Anything futuristic or time period pieces that don't exist anymore, and you can recreate them digitally and then print them.
So what's your role in this? I imagine there's a lot of people that are involved in creating props for film.
Yeah, I guess the typical workflow is that the art department will get some concepts signed off, and then you'll be given, I don't know, however many you're tasked with, and it's how you interpret the concept, how you make it manufacturable, what sort of considerations you need to put into your design. Does it need to be plated? Is it going to be molded? How heavy is it going to be? Because some actors don't like to be holding heavy props all day. It's exhausting on set, especially if they're wearing costumes and then they've got an extra heavy prop. So you need to think about those considerations. Is there a special effects feature? Like, does it need to like have a black powder charge in it, so when you fire it, it goes off? Ergonomics as well, and trying to get it done yesterday, all that fun stuff.
I imagine though, having just picking up you talking about having light props for the actors. I mean, surely there has to be an element of realism on screen. I mean, are they pretending that this thing's really heavy? Is they're holding this like massive gun, but really it weighs like less than a bag of sugar? I mean,
I love watching. I think it's Tested with Adam Savage, and he goes through all of the different types of props. And I think there was a Vice special where they go onto the set of Blade Runner and they look around, and they do an interview with Doug Harlocker, who's like the prop master, and he's got like all these beautiful Pelly cases with all the different variations of hand props. So you've got like the master props, which are like amazing for close-up shots, and they have the real weight, and it allows the actor to kind of get into the role. And then you've got like the stunt props where they'll be made out of rubber, but they've got an amazing finish. I think that's a really good video that I kind of go back to and kind of look at, because I just love all the Blade Runner stuff.
You mentioned a few films. I've seen a few films that you've you could attribute to titles such as Morbius, Game of Thrones, Black Widow, Aqua Man, Blade Runner. 2016, you worked on Ready Player One.
Yeah.
James Bond, Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars. That's pretty epic, right?
Yeah, it was really, really bizarre. That's like a story in itself. I've been very lucky with the variety of work that I've been involved with, and I think in the short time that I've been involved, I've had experience across scanning for like props, actors, and sets. Like you mentioned, like Morbius, like we did a lot of like prop scanning, a lot of facial capture sessions, body capture sessions. It's been really cool being able to work across different fields, not specifically scanning and not specifically props, but like the mixture of the two. And when it comes to like making props, I think having an understanding of scanning is really helpful, because there are times where you have to work from scan data as reference and like reverse engineer certain objects or costume pieces and adapt them. So the two, I think, the experiences have really helped like moving forward.
So you mentioned scanning. So one of your roles going into the industry was as a scanner, right? So I imagine you're 3D scanning objects, and then they become a 3D object on the screen, and then you can manipulate that to then reprint it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's happened quite a bit. Like a good example of this when I was working at Prop Shop there was at the end of episode 7. That's when I joined. They were making the crew gifts, and they wanted to make some like bespoke chess sets for, I think it was Kathleen Kennedy, Bob Iger, and J.J. Abrams. And I had this task of taking scan data assets and making them into like a full chess set. That was quite intense, because again the time frame was really short, so you're having to like pose and adapt and resculpt and rebuild scan data. And that's a good example. And you find as well that when you're designing a costume, which I don't do a lot of, but for Ready Player One we were doing the headsets, and we had like head scans of the actors, and we look at the concept and we like adapt it to conform to the actor's head. That really helps with the ergonomics.
So you work with the actors scanning things. I suppose if you're creating a helmet for them, you're having to scan their head to get the size to then model the helmet
exactly.
on their head in 3D.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
so you're up and close to quite a lot of these actors then, right?
When I've been usually when you scan a set, it's completely empty, because you don't want lots of people, floating around, because when the LiDAR scanner is like doing its pass, it will, if someone walks through that laser, it creates like a ghost.
Right.
So then
So have I missed something out? Hang on. So you've got one thing which is props and scanning props.
Yeah.
What's scanning a whole set? What's the purpose for that then?
So in scanning, you have prop scanning, you have body scanning, and you have set scanning, and all three of them are like VFX deliverables for whichever VFX house is working on the film. It's kind of like scanning is like right at the beginning of the VFX pipeline. It's like you ingest all of this data, they request it, it's delivered, and then you've got all the VFX artists that are like rebuilding these assets digitally using the 3D scans combined with the textures as well. So you're getting like digital props with the real world textures projected onto them, and then you see them on screen, and for whatever set piece they're doing, and they can composite these assets into a scene, and you won't know the difference because it's from real world data.
So part of the role so not just only working with props, but is also, as you say, scanning sets and making sure that any props that are in the scene digitally after the fact are also composited. And I suppose so you're aiding quite a lot of the production then from a scanning point of view, very integral.
Yeah, scanning's really crucial, and you get to see a lot of really cool things. You get to meet some very interesting characters, especially when you're like guiding a fact session, or just doing body scanning. You meet a lot of people.
Have you had to scan any like real grade A celebs?
So there was Star Wars when I was a part of like a big team of scanning technicians. We're doing a lot of scanning as well as 3D printing, because many departments would want to like use the data for different things like prosthetics. So like we'd scan someone's face, and then creatures would want like some prints of the face so they could do prosthetics. I think one of the first jobs I worked on with a guy called Jordan Fisher, we flew out to Budapest to work on Robin Hood. I don't know if you remember that film.
Yeah, I do.
I got to meet obviously the main cast, but I always remember having a quick chat with Jamie Foxx, which was so bizarre. As a kid, you watch films and you see these people, and I watched the film The Kingdom with my dad. It's like one of the first DVDs I watched, and I was like, oh, I love this film. Jamie Foxx was amazing in it, and then you're out in Budapest years and years later, and it's Jamie Foxx, and you're like, I don't know, it's just a very, very bizarre feeling, and he is as cool as you see him in real life.
So how did you get into the industry? I imagine, because it's such a niche part of the production process, right? The scanning and the modeling world, and particularly, I suppose, like weapons. It's such a obviously this. I imagine this is something you've always wanted to do, and you're now following this dream. So how did you get into the industry?
You're in high school and your careers advisors like, what do you want to do? When you grow up, and like a lot of kids, you dream about stuff, and because my family, we love films, and when Band of Brothers came out, I'd watch it with my dad, I think every Sunday when the new episode came out, and then we'd buy the DVD, and on the special features there's a whole like segment when they focus on props, and I remember watching this sequence where they've got like this MG42 machine gun. It's quite a heavy gun, and they molded it in like hard rubber. And I think they throw the machine gun at one of the producers, and he flinches to catch it. But then he's like, oh my God, how light is this? Because he's thinking it's the real thing. And I was just like, wow, what an interesting job it is to be, You
just presume, I suppose, as a kid that these props are actually just, I suppose, real, like maybe blanked off guns that they're using that are real.
So they must have taken a mold of the real thing, tidied it up, painted it, and made it look like the real thing. And I don't know how many kids look at that and think, oh, that's cool. But, but you watch a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and it's inspiring, the amount of time and energy that goes into like even the smallest of details. You've got hero props, you've got crowd props, you've got set deck, you've got all these not little, but these areas where there's like so much like care and effort put even into the smallest of details. And I just, I love that. And
so what was the first call you made or letter you sent?
Well, after being told that it's not a way to make money or a viable career option, I kind of missed.
Who's that? Who told you that? You name dropped the teacher.
But I always remember that. And high school, college, university, wanted to do games because I was a bit of a geek, a bit of a gamer. But then again, with two parents, I'm not sure about that. It's probably not a great way to earn money.
Well, gaming's a huge industry now. I remember when I was younger and growing up and thinking like games and thinking that's an industry, but I mean, that's never gonna pay a bill, right? Well, whoa, what a mistake of a comment that was.
Well, there's still time.
So your teachers told you you'd never get a job in this field.
Yeah, and then parents kind of deterring me away from games, so I chose this course, which was a mixture of engineering and business studies. It was like because I felt like I was creative and I could come up with ideas. So I was doing a bit of CAD, like Pro Engineer, learning about scanning and rapid prototyping, and then trying to pitch an idea. Finished, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had a work a year in industry set up with BAE Systems, but they pulled out at the last minute, and it was something to do with like insurance. They couldn't sort the insurance out, but it left open this whole year, and I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to focus on, and through doing some charity work in the local village, I met this one of my neighbours that I've known for a while, called Bill Farmer, and he said, Elliot, what are you doing? Like, what you should be out there, getting out into the world. And through him, he got me into London, which I was terrified of. I was like, this big city, because what the Midlands isn't, and like where we grew up, it's very sleepy,
Yeah. Well, we know each other from, I suppose, being in and around the same area. We have mutual friends, and so we're at Stratford upon Avon, kind of Warwickshire. There's a train line down to London. It's about an hour and 20 minutes. But London's a scary place when you're young and from the Midlands. So.
My friends had been down there and they didn't really like it, so they came back, and I was like, well, if they didn't like it, I'm not gonna like it. And first time in London, it's like so many people running around the tube. It's like, what is the tube? Trying to negotiate all the. But I ended up working at this architectural firm, but I'm not an architect, and that didn't last, because the director sat me down and was like, Elliot, you don't really. This isn't you, and I don't want to sound rude, but like, you're not an architect. And I was like, well, I know this. So
it's because you like on the internet all the time looking at like fake weapons. Like,
I really tried my best.
Look at this spear. We're not going to put that spear in this property that we're designing, Elliot. I don't think this is for you.
To be honest, I was really hyped up for having a job in London, and I really gave it my best. And I was kind of a bit heartbroken when he told me this, but it was the best piece of advice. And from that, I was like, what do I want to do? And I was like, what didn't I get to do a lot of at uni? And that was, I wanted to get into 3D printing. I was like, 3D printing was amazing, but the guys in the workshop were always like, oh, it's expensive, and well, you stay over there and we'll keep the printers in here. So with that frustration, I found this company, and I sent off a few letters, and I got an interview, and I was like, wow, okay. So I got into this company, and I was there for a while, and my first girlfriend I met there as well in London, and her and I were like really interested in scanning and 3D printing, and we'd go to the 3D print show, and we came across this company called Prop Shop, and they were exhibiting all of their like hero props, and there was costumes from Pacific Rim there, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. But I didn't connect the dots at the time. because I was like, I'm just starting in this kind of startup, and I still don't know how to get there. And I think a year went by, and my girlfriend, she left and went to prop shop, and she started on Star Wars Episode 7. So me hearing this,
instant awesomeness just explodes in your mind. You're like,
yeah,
Star
because
Wars.
when I heard the films were being like when they were rebooting the franchise, like as a Star Wars fan, I was just like, I have to be a part of this somehow. How do I get there? And she invited me to the wrap party after they finished shooting, and that was a hell of an experience. It was at the Science Museum. Everyone's in dinner suits, some people in shorts and sandals. It was so bizarre. And I met a lot of the prop shop team there, and I'm still friends with a lot of them. And I was like, I have to get in there. And a couple of emails later, and it happened. And this is what's happened now, and that's a part of the journey, really.
You've worked for a few companies, having checked out your LinkedIn. BGI Supplies, Gentle Giant, Plowman Craven. I mean, you're at BGI Supplies now, right?
Freelancing on and off with them, yeah.
So you've moved from being a staff member now to a freelance. And what would you specifically call your title as a freelancer?
Prop maker, but like a digital prop maker. So designing in a CAD or sculptural polymodel software for 3D printing.
And how have you found being freelance compared to being a staff member? I mean, there's less politics, right, when you're freelance. It's always nice to kind of say, hey, I'm going to do this job, and it's great to see all of who doesn't like who in the office here, but hey, I'm leaving as soon as this job's done, and I'm not getting involved, okay? Because that's everywhere, okay? That is everywhere.
With freelance, yes, you do have that that freedom. But with COVID, it's kind of backfired, because I started freelancing August of 2019, and I'm not able to get any of the support from the government because I don't have any tax records for previous years. So I'm one of those unfortunate people that have been caught in that.
Yeah, I can sympathise. It's the same for myself. It's the same for many people. We're all stuck here with. I mean, I was going to ask the question: how's work been over the coronavirus? I mean, for us, it's gone very quiet. A lot of jobs that were planned for this year have postponed with no word, or have been cancelled. And yeah, it's been a hard time. I think particularly in the creative industries, like specifically like anything that requires the filming of something, where councils are not permitting permits for locations. Insurance companies aren't insuring shoots to go ahead. And of course, like, I mean, I'm post-production, like we need something to have been shot before it gets to us to work on it. And I guess if you need the shoot to go ahead to be able to create the props and work with these people. And of course, I suppose you're up close with people, right? If you're scanning their body and trying to see how things fit, it must be really difficult. And yes, there has been zero support from the government here in the UK. So thanks, guys. But how have you found the coronavirus then? Obviously, it's a right pain.
I started for 2 or 3 weeks, and then it got put on hold, and then I've been doing a lot of like working on my portfolio and a lot of projects that I've not been able to finish. It's been, I say like coronavirus has been bad, but I think for a lot of 3D artists and creatives out there, I think it's been kind of like a godsend in some ways, because I've been able to like refine some of my pipeline, focus on areas which I've been a bit weak at, and do a lot of like online tuition in the meantime. So I've tried to use the time as effectively as possible. And experiment with like new bits of software. So it's been enriching, but kind of limiting in terms of what you can do on a day-to-day basis. I don't know if you've had the same experience where like you've been able to like pick up new skills.
Yeah, I mean, you get to I suppose, invest a bit of time in learning new bits of software, or, like you say, refining your skill sets. So in that respect, it's been awesome. I mean, also for getting in touch with people, creating these podcasts as well, you know, and like, I suppose, you know, meeting you again after a few years of us having lost contact, about couple of decades. And yeah, as with a few other people, it's been a great opportunity to do this kind of thing. But you know, it's all good until someone's money runs out, and how long it all carries on without any work coming in. And so the serious side is, obviously, people need to earn a living to pay their way. And if work's completely cut out for a year and there's been zero support, that is that's really tricky. And everyone's situation is obviously very different. Yeah. So what's you mentioned a few software packages, I think, earlier. What kind of software packages do you kind of use mainly for your type of work?
I guess it kind of depends on what you're building. Like most recently, I've been learning Fusion 360. It's always good to have a CAD package, because with like a CAD package, you can choose the units you're working in. You can make precise changes, and because it's a parametric modeler, it remembers like every feature you've built. So if you need to make a change, like somewhere in the past of design iteration, 1, 2, or 3, you can go back into that file, change the fillet, the chamfer, the offset, and then it will update as soon as you've made the changes. Where, say, if you're like sculpting something in ZBrush, you do have your history, but if you close the file and open it again, the history won't be there. And there's pros and cons. So like, using ZBrush for sculpting organic, like sculptural details, or you can even use it for hard surface. Like, it's got an amazing Boolean feature, which I use a lot. And what I think is really powerful is like when you combine software together. So like on one of my latest projects I was working on, I built a lot of the assets in Fusion, but then I wanted to do like a fabric mesh that kind of goes over a piece. So I could import my my Fusion 360 model into ZBrush, and then use all the tools that ZBrush has and detail those bits, and then export it and then render it. And you find a lot that people have that pipeline. They define like the basic shapes in like Fusion or SketchUp, Moi, and then they'll bring it into ZBrush and start detailing it and give it that extra layer. I really love learning new software, because like every software has strengths and weaknesses, and when you combine them together, you get like some really incredible artwork. And I think one of my main inspirations is an artist called Vitaly Bugarov, and he's like a master of this, where he has an amazing design idea, and then he executes it using multiple software packages to achieve a result. So I'm trying to like replicate what he does.
And that's good, because you should never fall in love with a piece of software, because one day they're going to pull it, and you're going to be, if you said, I am a Fusion 360 artist and I only use Fusion 360, and then next week it turns out they pulled the product, you're no longer employable.
Well, I feel like Fusion's like such a strong platform, and Autodesk have done a good job of pushing it. And I know a lot of people in the industry use it just because of how powerful it is. And it's got some features that are kind of similar to sub-D modeling. It's got this form feature where you can create compound curve organic features in a similar fashion to how you push points in like Modo or Maya or Blender. And then you can transform that into a body, and then, edit that, add your features. And it's really powerful in the ability that it can import scan data. So you can build around scan data. It can handle high density meshes, where, like, for example, Moi, it can only handle like low sub-D meshes or something that's been decimated a lot. Yeah, it's all nerdy talk, but I love it.
Well, yeah, I was probably nodding throughout a lot of that, going, yeah, thinking like, I have no idea what he's talking about. It organic, something asymmetric.
Yeah.
there's obviously a big creative element to what you do. There's also a very technical element to what you do. I mean, you have to technically know how these softwares operate, what what you can and can't do, the limits of each piece of software. So creatively, I guess you work to a brief, like somebody says, hey, we need this weapon, it needs to do X, Y, and Z. Like creatively, what do you feel you're bringing to the model when you're creating it? Are you allowed to have your own kind of input on that, or is it very brief specific?
So there are occasions where I say like my job is is interpreting a concept, and the creativity comes in solving the problem in how to make it a real world product. But there are a lot of times where there isn't any time and they need a design solution, so you have to come up with something on the spot. So there's no time to sketch it. You have to implement the ideas in your head very quickly. And
why then do you've mentioned a few times like speed of this. I mean, my experience with production in general is that planning is key, and a lot of things get planned for months, if not years, in advance before going ahead. So how come in the props world why is there such a fast turnaround time frame?
I guess it comes down to opinions.
I mean, nobody at the last minute just went, oh God, this scene where like this character's shooting the other one, we need a gun for that. Nobody thought about this,
I think it's sometimes there'll be a change in the script or change in ideas, and because of the lead times on so many of the processes that come after just modeling, that's where there's such a rush. Because, for example, say it takes 2 days to model an asset and that it's going to be printed, then the file has to be sent off. Then it's like a day turnaround to get it processed at the printing bureau. Then it's how far is your object in the queue? Because I'm assuming what we're building now is something that's too big for the printers that they would have in a workshop. So you have to allow time for printing and postage and delivery. Then it comes to the workshop. Then it has to be cleaned up. Then it has to be primed, or if it's going straight on set, or it's going to be molded. And then molding is like a whole other, set of stages. So when I say they need something quickly, it's all because there's so much more happening after just modeling and printing.
So that's interesting, actually. So my brother-in-law actually works for a company that I think actually you've worked with, a company called Malcolm Nichols over in Bidford, over this way. And I mean, I've seen it firsthand. I mean, just because you press print on something that comes off one of these printers, it's not a finished product until it's had a lot of time refining that. Yeah. That design. So if I'm right in saying that you have to build them in 3D so that they can actually stand their own weight while in certain areas of the item whilst being printed, is that correct? Or is that after you've modeled it, someone says, right, when this is being printed, no way is this part of this design going to print without there being some supports, and then once those supports have been printed, they need to be removed, and then the whole thing filed down, prepped for painting, I guess. Have I missed anything out?
No, it's true. It's like, for example, this is like a 3D printed phone stand.
For those listening, Elliot is holding a stand. This is also Spotify as much as it is video, so I'll explain what we're seeing. It's an orange 3D printed stand for a phone.
This is a very crude iPhone stand.
It's a very crude iPhone stand that Elliot is holding to the camera.
Printed in PLA. Because this is like a pretty basic object, and you can see at the bottom it's completely flat. There's no overhangs, so it can print all in one go with no support. However, when you've got complicated objects like a bust of a character, or like any sort of object, and in each printer you have a build volume, and you fill the volume full of the objects, and the printer software detects where there are overhangs, and where an overhang is an area where the printer will not successfully print unless there's some support material. If you printed it without support material, there would be a failure, and the whole your print wouldn't work, and you'd end up, especially on the FDM machines, you'd end up with like spaghetti mess, which a lot of people know about. It's when there's no support in that area, and it just extrudes into like open space. And it just causes all this like spaghetti, which is a nightmare. So yeah, but I imagine the printers that Malcolm Nichols have, it's an SLA printer, like a resin printer. So the software automatically detects these areas, and it produces these supports to prevent the failure. So it can build all of these complex geometry 3D models easily.
That's great that it works it out for you. I presumed it was someone's job to kind of like second guess it and then trial and error. But if it's the software telling you, yeah, no, that's great. I mean, what's the durability like on these printed items? I mean, I'm guessing on set, if you've got like a weapon that's being thrown around quite a bit, I mean, do they break easily?
Point of contention, because there's a lot of printing has had a bad rep on set. There's been some cases where I won't go into details, but certain objects have been printed rather than molded, or there wasn't time for it, and they've broken on set. And you know, a lot of the people on set and in the workshops are always like, "Oh, it's been printed, it's crap," you know.
Right.
But it's because it's not being used to its strengths. Printing is not meant to be used as the final product. But in a lot of cases, it is being used because it's convenient. You know, you take out all that time that's involved in molding, and there are some things that you just can't make by hand that that printing is amazing for. Like, shout out to Simon at 3D Systems, but they do this amazing clear resin that when you polish it up with their in-house methods, it looks like glass. You know, and you can create these amazing lenses and surfaces that you can incorporate into anything, and it looks it's incredible. And you know, we've used that on a few jobs.
So part of what when you're modeling something, you're obviously having to think about how this is going to look as a real object, and I suppose that has an effect on what you can achieve. I mean, if you know that you can create this glass-looking effect using that method, then I suppose you're more inclined to use it within the model, especially if you've got a tight turnaround time frame.
Yeah.
I suppose it's there's a lot whirring around in your head when you're designing these things, right?
Yeah, tolerances, you know. There's a lot.
Have you ever created something that, like, you've created this thing and it's like your baby object, and then you've kind of like pitched it and presented it to like whoever it is that you need from the production, and they've gone, yeah, but you know, it needs to look more like this actually, and you've gone, no. Do you ever get precious about the things you design, or
you can't be precious like that? There was on Ready Player One, there was I had like this 8 pieces of paper with concepts on each side, and you know, out of those, not all of them make the final cut, because you know, when it's in front of the director, they'll choose what they like. And sometimes you know, even though you like this design, it doesn't mean that the director or anyone else is going to like the design, and it's none of your business. You know, you do your job as best as you can, and when it's presented, it's, you know, that's the way it goes. But you always hope that whatever you've been involved with makes it onto the screen.
And it must be really awesome when you're watching the final product on the big screen, that, you know, you're looking at that particular item and just going, yeah, I did that, I put that there, I made this, I made that happen.
There is that, but I'm always thinking about like all the hard work and all like the sweat and tears and, you know, the stress.
Yeah.
But it's a part of the story, and I think that's why I like props so much, because behind every detail that you see on screen, there's months of hard work and meetings and you know, drawings and coffees and sandwiches and people scratching their head and, you know, finding the solutions. And it's like, I think the whole filming process is amazing. It's like you've got all this chaos happening, all these ideas, and it's like filtered down to what you see on the screen, like, you know, 6 months or 12 months time, you know, and I'm always amazed by that. What's
been your favorite either project to work on, or favorite prop to model, or, you know, what's been one of your favorite things to have done so far in your career in this world?
So in terms of props, I can't speak about any of that sort of stuff because it's kind of recent. But come on,
your favorite projects before that, your favorite models.
I'm not going to beat around the bush. You know, growing up watching Star Wars, you know, it's a dream come true in many ways to just be a part of that franchise. Just yeah, you know, I feel very lucky. You know, the fact that it was filmed in the UK, it could have been filmed anywhere. You know, yeah, I feel very fortunate that like it happened the way it did. You know, to be on the sets, to see, you know, to touch and just take it all in. Very humbling, and to be surrounded by so many talented people. Like, you know, I was doing scanning, but there's a lot of like incredibly smart and like hardworking individuals that like, you know, that they love their craft, and it shows. So yeah, I'd say like working on Solo was just amazing. You know, I want to swear it was incredible. It was like this moody battlefield scene inside the Bond stage, and you know, there's soil on the ground. There's a huge crater with a bit of special effects, like a flame projector, and you know, you've got stormtroopers all muddied up, and the lighting's got like this like low orange hue that's like lighting up the fog. It was like World War One with stormtroopers, and then they start doing their rehearsal, and then they do the final shot with all the special effects going off. So you've got rockets and explosions, and you're watching that, and you're just kind of like, this is unreal, you know.
I think that's I mean, that kind of moment is a reason why a lot of people are in this industry. I mean, we work our asses off. We jump through hoops. We take a lot of stress, work long hours, and essentially it's for things like that one moment. It's the passion behind the filmmaking, right? That it excites us. What do you think to the likes of the Mandalorian? That's the virtual production version of Star Wars, isn't it? It's where there's no actual real physical sets. It's all done in a 360 virtual environment.
So they're using the virtual production with Unreal Engine, and they are using small amounts of sets. Like I think you'll see like tables and chairs, but you're right. It's a virtual production, and I don't know. I had mixed feelings about it. I was like, "Ooh, what's this going to do to the industry?" You know, what about all those people that like, you know, set painters and set deck, and you know, I was thinking about all of those guys, because obviously the costume teams are obviously still going to be in business, and props.
Yeah.
I was like, what about all these sets? You know, like.
But I suppose a set designer will go from creating massive Sykes and, you know, matte paintings and stuff, and it will just be transferred to doing that digitally in the 3D software. I don't know. And I imagine with coronavirus, there'll be a lot more need for that kind of production. I mean, it looks good. I mean, Disney have done a really good job with the Mandalorian, and you know, in a world where we can't physically go to places and bring people together, if it could be in a controlled environment on a set where people can still distance from one another, and they can then at the click of a finger be wherever it is they need to shoot. I guess that kind of works out. But I haven't heard much chat about that happening yet as a solution.
It's early days, isn't it, really?
Yeah, but the Unreal Engine is what it is. It's Unreal. I mean, it's a great tool.
If kids are picking, you know, Unreal up, and I don't know if you know about Blender. Like Blender's, it's just going upwards.
But it's free, isn't it? I mean, it's you can download it for free and start modeling.
Yeah, I've been using it at work for a few bits and bobs, but like I heard that Microsoft are now backing the development of Blender, and I don't, you know, what's it like? The bread and butter of VFX now is like we got Mari, you got Maya, is it Shotgun, Nuke? You've got all these like softwares that people pay significant amounts of money for, and then you've got Blender coming along here, just like.
Yeah, it'll be good until someone decides there's a way of monetizing it, which will maybe come in the future. It'd be nice to think that it would be free, but it'll get bought out by Autodesk or something like that, who will then just get rid of it because it's taking business away from their software.
He's that it stays free. And he like the philosophy behind it was just for artists to make like cool stuff, without the price tag. Like I've spent a fortune on software. I could have gone traveling maybe. Well, not now. Anyway, so.
Couldn't have known. It was money well spent. So what do you think the future for model making is? I mean, obviously you're already in the future because you're already designing these things in 3D and in the 3D environment. You're already printing these things with 3D printers. I mean, have you seen any nods to the future about where it may improve? Or
I feel like model making is probably going to stay the same for quite some time. I know that 3D printing was kind of a little bit disruptive because it scared a lot of the traditional model makers in a way, because they don't necessarily know any CAD packages, so it's not adding to what they do. Maybe it's taking away certain work that they would have made by hand. And when I speak to some of these people that don't have like such great attitudes towards 3D printing, I'm always like encouraging them to like maybe just pick up SketchUp or some of these like free CAD packages, because I know times it's really valuable, and it's hard. I think people find it quite hard to pick up software if they're not technologically savvy. But if they can implement that into what they already know, then that's the future. I think it's like, even when I was back doing some work experience at Hasbro, David Vannemeyer was saying to me that the way that like ZBrush has impacted the way they make toys now. He used to be a traditional hand sculptor, and now he's it's all gone digital, and the people that don't translate what they know from the real world into like the virtual world, they miss out. They miss the boat.
I mean, I've always been a great believer in Control Z. I've been brought up with keyboard fingers. My family, my father is an engineer, and he's very much hands-on metal work, and he can put his hand to anything DIY. Me, I try, but then as soon as I've put a nail somewhere that shouldn't be there, or something that I tried and I just want to press Control Z, and you can't. And I guess that's the beauty.
When I'm sketching, sometimes I'm like, oh, can I just no.
If you were going back in time and you could meet your previous self, what advice would you give yourself?
I think this kind of goes back to what you were saying about what's the most creative part of the job. Like I love building, I love solving problems, but I think there's a lot of enjoyment when it comes to creating ideas and concepting. And I know the concept market is saturated at the moment. So many people want to do concept art, but if I already know how to make, maybe what I'm thinking in my head, but if I could go back in time, I'd tell my younger self to focus more on like the basic fundamentals, like drawing, anatomy, and just get them down really, really well. Because I've been using this time now to like improve my sketching and my design work and the way I approach design, so that in the future I can maybe transition into concepting for film, which would be quite nice.
What advice would you give anybody looking to get into your industry?
It's quite a closed industry. And I think I was lucky in the respect that I was being involved in 3D scanning and printing prior to getting in, and that was something the industry needed at the time and still need now. If people wanted to get into the industry, scanning is a great way, because you can be taught by the scanning companies how to scan, or if you've picked up something from uni where you've used scanning, that will translate for working for these companies like Gentle Giant do scanning, Clear Angle based in the UK and internationally they do scanning. A lot of my friends work there. And so I think depending on the course as well, I know that people who do model making courses, some people in those departments have connections to people in industry. I know, for example, people with a digital background, they've started off in TV and then transitioned into film because there is a crossover. And I think now with Netflix, Amazon, Apple TV, there's potentially so many productions going on now that there's going to be a huge demand for new people getting involved, and I don't know the direct way to get to those departments, but
well, what companies? I mean, you've already name drop a few, but if you were going to suggest just kind of cold writing to somebody, not necessarily somebody, but a company, which ones would you say are like the taking on more junior people?
It depends what you want to do, and I don't know if you noticed this, but Disney, I think they've been trying to push getting more young people involved in their productions. They did a promotional campaign for Solo, and it shows people from different backgrounds getting involved in all aspects of the film production. I think they had a connection with the British Film Institute. I could be wrong. Is it BFI?
Yeah.
London? Is there like an academy as well in London?
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they have a connection. They have
So you'd say a good route in is to kind of seek the courses out, like the BFI or whatever, or like a specialist course somewhere that has connections to the industry.
Yeah, and another good place, say on like the other end of the production, if you wanted to get into VFX, I know that Escape Studios, based in London, they do a lot of really good courses. I did a taster session there a while back, and a lot of the people who are teaching the courses, they come from these VFX studios. So they have their connections and they have all that wealth of knowledge. And even the people helping in the classes, they're ex-students that are transitioning to go work in VFX. I guess now's not a great time because there's no real, work out there. I know a lot of the VFX houses they've reduced their workforce significantly.
There's a lot of redundancies going on at the moment.
But the thing is, with the amount of streaming platforms out there, there's a demand for so much content. So there's going to be so much work, I hope, at some point, and it's just going to pick up. I'm positive. I don't know about you.
No, we have to be positive because the industry is not going to go away. Of course, it's not. We'll find ways of working around whatever needs to work around to get it for us to be able to shoot stuff. And we're already seeing some productions going back to work.
Yeah, touch wood.
So as a freelancer, how have you found picking up the work? Because do you have enough contacts in different companies that you can see a good amount of work? And how long does a project last for you? Is it like a week, a month, days that you're employed for?
It can vary. Like it can be months, 6 months, or it can be like 3 days. The projects come from one thing might be just getting a file 3D printable. It might be an art project for an artist that will last a week. It might be it's everything, and film, art, VFX even. There's always variety, so it's always interesting. Right now, it's been pretty dry because obviously no one's working.
Yeah. Elliot, thank you for your time. You can follow Elliot over on Instagram, which is at Elliott D Viles, all one word, and make sure you check out some of his work. As always, thank you for listening or watching wherever you may have found us. And until the next time, goodbye.
Cheers, mate.